Right, welcome back everyone, and this is the next part of our look with the help of Dr Dave Regis's ebook at the French defence for black. Dr Dave's book recommends the French defence for young and new players, and indeed older players as well, against the move that's E5, against the move E4. And we've already seen in the first three parts some examples of this. I've got 4 more games for you here. So let's, without further ado, get to it. And our first one is Germany 2006, Bala against Weiss in the Mittelfrankenliga. Okay, so I'm just going to rattle through the first few moves until we get to the critical position in each of these games, because as we've seen by now, many of the first sort of 8, 10, 12 moves can be just the same each time in the French defence, or at least very similar. So we have E4 and E6, of course, D4 and D5, and knight to D2, and knight to F6. In fact, I'll just stop here. Just if you haven't seen the previous videos, knight to D2 rather than C3, as black will often want to avoid this pin, will want to avoid the Vinover variation. But knight to D2 is played in our game. Knight to F6, attacking this pawn for a second time. So E5, knight escapes to D7, F4 from white, C5 from black, C3, knight c6. So as is often the case in the French defense with this pawn structure in the middle of the board, we have a big old fight very much for d4 and secondarily for e5, but especially this square d4. So 7th move for white, knight to f3, so more defense to this square, and the queen is now defending it as well. Queen to b6, so another piece putting pressure on that square. Knight e2, yet another piece defending it. And now f6 from black, so hitting at the center, white's big center, in 2 different directions. And the game is perfectly level at this point, no worries at all. G3 from white, okay, can't argue with that. Pawn takes pawn, and pawn takes pawn, and then bishop to b4 check. So this is all very, very well-known book theory, but the computer thinks maybe a tiny edge to black, okay. Bishop to d2, pawn takes on e5, pawn takes on e5, black gets castle, putting this rook on the nice open line. And okay, slight advantage to black anyway, but in our game in this position, queen to b3 was played. And this is a total disaster, as you can see from the bar, which has gone from -1 and a bit, which is, you know, better for black, to minus near enough -5, which just means black should be winning. If you want to stop the video, hit pause and see if you can find what should be played next, please do so. And otherwise I will carry on in 3, 2, and 1. And here's what black should do in this position. We play rook takes knight, attacking the white queen, who, not surprisingly, in our game, queen takes rook, but now comes bishop takes with check, king takes bishop, and queen takes b2. And white actually resigns in this position because there's no way to save this rook. And the game is pretty comfortable for black at this point. -5, -4, -5. So yeah, nice little combination there. All I would say is that in this position, actually just go back a little bit further. Yeah, in this position here, white's played g3. Game is pretty level. As you can see, computer is perfectly happy that it's dead level. So let's not get the idea that we've refuted e4. It's just a nice level game right up to the point where somebody gets something wrong. Okay, cool. So that's the first game done. Our second one, if we flip the board around, because we want to look at this from the black point of view, Rosman against Nedimovic from Nova Gorica in 1999. So Dr. Dave is busy finding games from just all over the place to help us learn our openings. And we've got e4, e6, d4 and d5. And we've got knight to d2, knight to f6, e5. This is exactly the same as the previous game for quite some time. f4, c5, c3, knight to c6, knight d to f3. All of this we've seen before. Queen to b6, knight to e2, f6, g3, pawn takes, bishop to b4, bishop to d2, pawn takes, castles from black. And here's our position. Okay, computer is saying, sorry, I keep putting the mouse across too far. Computer's saying maybe a tiny edge to black, but basically level. And certain, there we go, minus 0.2. It's level. To all intents and purposes, it's level. But in the game, white played queen to c2. And I think you'll see the bar will now say that black can get a bit of an advantage here. Yeah, -2. So if you want to have a little bit of a think about what black can play here that might get them the edge in the game, press pause. Otherwise, I'll carry on with what happened in the actual game in 3, 2, and 1. And I think that part of the problem here is is you're getting these openings, you're frequently going to get this sacrifice here. And that's exactly what happens in this game. So knight takes, knight recaptures. You can't really go with the pawn at this point because you'll just lose to rook takes knight, by the way. So it was knight recaptures. Knight takes and now pawn takes, but this opens up something else here. And what it opens up is queen to f2 check. Of course, the rook is defending the queen, so the king now has to move to one side, king to d1. But now you have an incredible move in this position. And again, if you want to press pause and try to find this, please do. It's quite a cool move. Otherwise, I'll carry on in 3, 2, and 1. And the point is queen takes bishop. Because if you play rook takes queen, rook takes rook, the only move to defend the check is here, but that's actually checkmate because the bishop's defending the rook, which is a little bit unpleasant. So what was actually played in the game after queen takes f1 was white blocked, but then you just play queen takes rook. And then really the game is over because you've got 2 minor pieces each, but black is up a whole rook. So yeah, that was pretty lethal. As Dr. Dave puts it in his book, black uses the knights to blow the doors off, then the major pieces, the rooks and the queens, as battering rams. Yeah, nice description. Okay, cool. So just remember that sacrifice in the middle of the board if you're playing the French defense. Sometimes it's going to be extremely dangerous. Okay, right, let's get a new board for our next game. And we'll just flip it up the wrong way. There we go. So we're looking at it from black's point of view. So we're in Nashod, I don't know where that is, 1998 for Kruma against Lassina. Okay, and we've got a resignation in 17 moves. Okay. So e4, e6, d4, d5, knight to d2, knight to f6, e5, knight fd7. By now, I'm pretty sure you'll recognize everything that's coming. Although having said that, slightly different move order this time. So c3 from white, now c5 from black, and now white plays f4. So same position, different move order. Knight to c6. Remember, it's all about this, but particularly d4. Where have I got to? Knight d to f3 from white, queen to b6 from black, knight to e2 from white, and f6, and this is, I say, all pretty much known theory. G3 for white. I wonder what the computer recommends here. Does it want to play G3? Yes, it does. So G3 or even A4, suggested by the computer, something a bit different, and A3. But G3 is the book move, and that's what was played in the game. Pawn takes from black, pawn takes from white, bishop to b4 check, bishop to d2. And it's worth noting the computer really likes black's position here. Slight advantage to black, yeah. So interesting. Pawn takes. In this game, we get the f-pawn retaking, so that after black castles, there's a threat on the knight. So something has to be done to protect the knight. So bishop to g2, which does the job. But now here we go again with our issue in the middle of the board, because the queen and the rook, with no f-pawn on the board to block them, are looking at this square. And so black goes straight in with this sacrifice. Knight takes, pawn takes, and knight takes. Now remember, white can't take back because queen here is checkmate. So in this position, move 15, white takes the bishop. Okay, black recaptures with check. King to f2 from white, and queen to e4 from black. So a lot of pieces lined up on this pinned knight. Remember, it can't move because the king's behind it. So if black had another move here, they could play knight takes, bishop takes, queen takes, and just be, yeah, it would just be very, very nice, I should think. And white in this position, it's still, you know, defendable. It's a tiny advantage to black, but minus 0.9. The game's not over. But white plays knight to f4. You'll see the bar disappear at this point. So if you'd like to work out why knight to f4 was a bit of a disaster, or as Dr. Dave puts it in the book, nice easy one, time to finish off white, well, press pause now. Otherwise, I'll carry on in 3, 2, and 1. And the move is simply knight to g4 check. So not a difficult one to spot, I guess. And white loses the queen. For example, if you go king to f1, knight here is check. And when you get out of check, knight will take queen. If you go here, well, then the queen simply goes here with check. There's nothing you can put in the way. There's nothing that can take the queen. So you'd have to go back here. And then that is checkmate because the queen is supported by the cavalier, by the knight. So yeah, ouch. Yeah, pretty unpleasant way to go. Okay. Right, one more game today, or in this video anyway. And where are we this time? Ruhrgebiet. So we're back in Germany, 1996, and we have Wittig against Frohne. And this time white resigns on move 18. Wow, okay. So let's go through the opening again. E4, E6, D4, D5, knight to D2, knight to F6. E5 is played. Knight f to d7, so we know all of this by now. This is all standard theory, perfectly good for both sides. f4 is played, here comes c5, attacking d4, here's c3, defending d4, knight to c6, attacking d4, knight to d3, defending d4. You get the idea of the theme of this opening. Queen to b6, guess what? It's another piece on d4. Knight to e2, guess, oh, no, guess what? It's another piece on d4. Okay, fantastic. And here's black's 8th move, f6. And what a mess in the middle of the board. There's things all over the place that can capture each other. We've seen this position. The computer, with its cold-blooded self, just says it's pretty much level. Okay, plus 0.4 is pretty level. How does this game carry on? Right, g3 from white. And pawn takes pawn from black. Pawn takes pawn from white. The bishop check that we've seen in other games from black. Bishop to d2. Pawn takes e5. This is a game with the f pawn recapturing. Castles. Bishop to g2. So up to now, exactly the same as the previous game. And let's see where it goes. Knight takes on e5. Pawn takes on e5. Knight takes on e5. And in this game, white tries knight to c1. Okay, there goes the bar. Thought we'd give the computer a second just to work it all out. And now, as Dr. Dave puts it in the book, a thunderstorm of black pieces is circling over white's king. He has quite the way with words. So if you'd like to work out the correct next move for white, how do we finish things off? Hit pause now. Otherwise, I will play the moves on the board in 3, 2, and 1. Okay, and the winning move, a bit of a clue, is that this white bishop can't move because he's pinned to the king. And so white's next move, black's next move in the game, sorry, was queen to e3, which is check. So you can't play bishop takes. I'll try as much as you like, look, but you can't because it will put the king, oh, excuse me, it will put the king in danger. So what are you going to do here? This is a mess. In the game, white tried queen to e2. But knight to e takes f3, check, bishop takes, and you can't play queen takes because the queen is pinned. So the king has to move, king to d1, and actually white, having played king to d1, then just resigned. Because the game is just dead, isn't it? Yeah, this piece is going to get taken. I assume rook takes is just perfectly good as it. Yeah, the bar's crept down a little bit, but it's still -5. So there's not -5 and a bit. So, I mean, yeah, plenty. So yeah, very, very, very nice for black indeed. Actually, to the point where it makes you wonder where there must be some improvements for black in this position. So the computer's saying here it's pretty level, and yet we've just seen 3 or 4 games in a row where black does very, very nicely. Thank you. Maybe in this position, black should capture in a different way. Yeah, look, the computer's saying that actually here, sorry, black should capture, white should capture, that white should do it like this. And that keeps the game level rather than going with the pawn. So, okay. Cool. Well, that's the end for this video anyway. Let's just stop the analysis. We have another 4 games to go on the French defense. So hopefully you'll be able to join me for those 4 games next time. Thanks for watching. See you soon.